So as you can see, I like the 80s. And obviously the 80s transitioned into the 90s. And that has to do a lot with grunge. But I feel like in the transition phase between glam metal and grunge, people tend to forget that things are already shifting between the late 80s and early 90s. And while some people, or most people, would say that a lot of that had to do with thrash and Guns N' Roses, I would actually like to point out a different thing that took place within that period, which I like to call the permanent vacation effect. Now, the permanent vacation effect is basically what it sounds like. It's Aerosmith's release of their album, Permanent Vacation. And why that's important is because of what the album sounded like when it came out, which is basically a blues rock record. And I know what you're thinking. Hollywood, Guns N' Roses released Appetite for Destruction about a month before Permanent Vacation, and you're right. But Appetite for Destruction didn't blow up until '88. Permanent Vacation was basically a hit as soon as it came out, and it had, in my opinion, a bigger short-term effect on things, more so than Appetite. Really, in the short term. In the long term, of course, Appetite had the biggest effect, a much bigger effect than Permanent Vacation. But in the immediate short term effect, I feel that Permanent Vacation had a bigger effect at that point in time. Now, what I mean is, if you've listened to the album, it basically sounds a bit of a mix between pop and blues. Basically, Aerosmith's blues brand of rock, plus the mix of pop music. How you hear it with Ragdoll and Dude Looks Like a Lady and Angel and Magic Touch and a few other things. I noted this when I was listening to my Cheap Trick records, and I noted that the last two albums in the box set of the Cheap Trick records I have sounded a lot like Permanent Vacation. Basically a bunch of blues, not blues, but basically just bare bones rock and roll with obvious hits. And so I started looking into it, and the more I noticed this, the more I realized that a lot of bands within the immediate effect of Permanent Vacation being released started to do more of what Aerosmith did at that point in time. The first example I thought of was Motley Crue with Girls, 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 except that album came out a few months before both Appetite and Permanent Vacation. In spite of that, I do feel that Motley Crue is kind of like the earliest example of the Permanent Vacation effect, where they dropped all the glammy stuff in favor of more bluesy based material. So maybe this should be called the Girls, Girls, Girls effect, since it seems like Motley did it first. But I'm still going to call it the Permanent Vacation effect because that seems to be what set this whole thing off. The other band I wanted to mention, like I said earlier, was Cheap Trick, because Cheap Trick did their comeback, in my opinion, based upon Aerosmith's comeback. They hired outside producer and outside songwriters. They hired a different producer. I mean, they had been for a while. They got back to their classic lineup. They did all that stuff. Another example, Alice Cooper. He also hired an outside songwriter, and I forgot to mention Desmond Child was a songwriter. All these like groups that need like big comebacks, which is really what I should. It's really what it is that makes a Permanent Vacation effect so important, is the comeback. But all these bands who were trying to get these big hits were hiring outside songwriters And by outside songwriters, I mean Desmond Child. Basically, all these groups within this permanent vacation effect are hiring outside people to get them hits like Aerosmith. And I know it's true because it rhymed. Basically, as I already stated, permanent vacation effect is based upon a group, usually a group who hasn't had hits for a while, needing a hit, and so doing basically what Aerosmith did, hiring outside producers, rebranding themselves, doing all this stuff basically to get a hit. And Aerosmith gets the name for that because they did it first. And like I said, it was like the in-between point between the glam metal stuff and grunge. Even though it was a short period of time, it did have a big effect because it kind of just showed how weak the glam metal stuff was at that point because everybody was doing it. Like I said already, Motley Crue is also part of that, but they did start doing it before Aerosmith came out with their album, Permanent Vacation. Rat was another group that did that. They had a song off Reach for the Sky called Way Cool Jr., which sounds very Aerosmith. So, yeah. There are other groups too. Poison, who I hate really a lot, did this. Stripped down all the makeup and shit and started doing more Aerosmith sounding stuff. Yeah. That's basically it. That's basically all the stuff I have to say. It's basically what the permanent vacation effect is. I feel that I'm right. That's basically what happened. So, yeah. I think I'll just leave it there. If anybody has anything they want to say about that, you can leave it in the comments and subscribe to. So, yeah. See ya.